All right, folks, thank you so much for joining us today and also for sharing a little bit more about where you're coming from today. We have a really nice representation across many of our continents, and we also have a number of people watching with families, so welcome to our family members who are joining us, and also some folks watching with pets. Just as a heads up, I also am watching with a pet. Hopefully she stays nice and quiet during this session. But we'll be able to do some introductions. So my name is Haley Burrows. I'm an Associate Director of Admissions, and in the international world, I read applications coming from the Caribbean, but I've read from some other regions as well. And then I'll let my colleague Justin introduce himself as well.
Hello there. My name is Justin Major, and I'm one of the Associate Deans of Admission here at Penn. And I manage applications from the Middle East and North Africa.
Awesome. So we will get started with our presentation today. We've already seen a few questions come through about recording. So if you are jumping in and out of this session, it will be available on YouTube at some point in the next few days. Your best bet is to go and subscribe to our YouTube channel, and then you'll be able to stay tuned for any updates that come. So we will get started with the agenda. So today we'll be talking about the admissions process, really for students who are just getting started and thinking about the process. We'll talk a little bit about applications, how they work, some of those financial aid questions that you may have questions about. We'll talk a little bit about what happens in our admissions committee. And then we'll talk about, once you have those options in hand, what should you be looking for in terms of fit? How do you determine which is going to be the best school for you? And then we'll talk about sort of what the next steps in looking at colleges are. We did get a really good question right off the bat, which is like, who is an international student? And when we're thinking about international students, we use that term in our office really broadly. And anyone who's here, anyone who's interested in international topics is welcome to attend. When we think about reviewing international applicants, we think primarily about students who are being educated in a country outside of the United States. But there are lots of international students who maybe have spent 2 or 3 years in the States, who are in boarding school, who are recent immigrants to the US, and all of the students will benefit from some of this information. Some of the sort of granularity when it comes to financial aid and some of our testing processes will be a little bit more geared to students who are not being educated in the US, but all of this stuff will be really useful for students today. So we'll let Justin get started on our first topic.
Great, yeah. So first off, we want to just start with a topic that might seem well-known or commonplace, but it is worth repeating, and that is that there are different types of applications and application processes in terms of the timelines and when you're applying to the United States. So there are early programs, which by definition, you apply earlier and you find out your decision earlier. The early programs can be broken out into 2 different categories. One, which is basically binding, which means that if you're admitted to that program, you must enroll. And the other is a non-binding early program where you find out sooner, but you actually don't need to make your final decision until later on in the spring. We often call those the differences like early decision programs. Penn, for example, is an early decision program. So that means that it is binding, right? You must enroll if you're admitted. Early action programs is the term in the United States that's typically referred to early programs where you can decide later whether or not you'd like to accept that early offer. Regular decision is by far the most common plan for applicants, and the vast majority, anywhere from 2/3 to 80% of applicant pools will apply in regular decision. Typically it's a winter deadline, and then you find out in late March or early April about your decision. And then there's a universal reply deadline in May where you get to tell us whether or not you're coming or you're going somewhere else. And then the last category of application plans is rolling. This is less common, but there are large flagship state universities, also some private, that use this, which means they fill spots as they become available, and they fill up throughout the year. So the earlier, the better in terms of your application, and you'll find out earlier. And if you apply later, you'll only be admitted if there are still places that remain in that class. But this is a little bit less common among selective universities. And Haley, I'm going to turn it over.
So now we'll get into our next topic, which is really thinking about financial aid. And I think when students are thinking about college, oftentimes one of the big questions that students and families will have is like, this sounds really great. How are we going to pay for it? So when it comes to financial aid, there are a few different types of financial aid that students should be aware of. So there is need-based financial aid, and that means that we use a number of formulas and some information that you give us to determine how much money your family can afford to contribute to your education. And we use that information to give you some grants, some scholarships, etc. There's also merit-based financial aid. And what merit-based financial aid is that you're awarded aid based on some sort of skill that you have. When it comes to Penn, we do not offer any merit-based aid or scholarships that are related to merit, but instead focus all of our financial aid budget on providing financial aid to students who need that money. We do use grants in our financial aid packages, and what grants are is it's money that we're giving to you that we're never expecting you to pay back. We don't package loans into our packages, so when students are applying to Penn, they wouldn't be expected to contribute money back that they had been lent by us. There are also often a lot of questions for international students about need-blind versus need-aware admissions. So at Penn, we practice need-aware admissions, and that means that your ability to pay for international students will be factored into your financial aid decision. Penn, however, has one of the largest financial aid budgets in the world, and so we have many, many international students from across the financial spectrum who are able to find space on campus. Penn does practice need-blind admissions for US citizens, US permanent residents, as well as citizens of Mexico and Canada, as well as permanent residents of those two countries. So you qualify as a need-blind student under any of those categories. And we've gotten a couple questions already about, I'm a US citizen, but I live in Korea. When it comes to the financial aid process, it's entirely going to be based on your passport and where tax filings are happening. And so that's how that process will work. When it comes to financial aid, there are a couple tips that we should definitely make sure to share. And the first one is to observe the deadlines. Sometimes financial aid deadlines will be slightly different than the admissions deadlines. So when you're picking the schools, I think it's a great idea to make an Excel sheet of all of the different deadlines for all the different parts of the application, including financial aid that you'll be looking at. If you have special circumstances that maybe will make your financial aid different than it would appear on paper, it's a great idea to contact the financial aid offices to the schools you're applying to and just let them know what those may be. I know we have some parents watching today, and I think it's a great opportunity for families to speak about the financial aid process. I know that speaking about money is taboo, it's a little bit uncomfortable, but I think it's a great opportunity to allow students to be part of this big financial discussion as a family. Academic advisors, Education USA advisors are going to be really good resources to help you understand a little bit about the financial aid offerings per individual school. And all colleges in the US do have a net price calculator on their websites, and that can be a good tool for students for whom it's eligible. So that would be people who file taxes in the US to use that tool in order to determine what their financial fit may be.
Great, thanks. And so now we're going to move into a part of our program that discusses the application itself and how we use those applications to determine who should be admitted into our classes. And so we use a holistic review process. And this is one of those terms that you may not have heard of before, or you're wondering what it means. So whole person review or holistic review means that there's not one factor that is determinative in our process, meaning one part of your application isn't going to keep you out and one part isn't going to keep you in or get you admitted to our university. And instead, we think of these various components that you see here as collectively being predictive of your success in an American university setting. And in fact, our graduates who are successful in all kinds of ways, from a place like the University of Pennsylvania, it's really about drawing on their entire experience when they were here, not just, for example, performance in a particular academic class that they cite as leading to their success. And so we start that process early on in the application review process. So we're going to talk about academics. We're going to talk about what you do outside the classroom. We're going to talk about letters of support that you send, and then the parts of the application that you can control through the writing as one example. And then some universities also have interview programs. So first, we're going to start with academics in this next slide. And academics are defined as the courses you've taken in your school and how well you've done in those courses. We are very concerned with what's available in your environment. And so many times we're asked by students, domestic and international, whether or not we compare offerings around the world. And the reality is that you don't control, where you attend school for the most part. And so there are hundreds and hundreds of different educational systems, and our admissions officers are trained to understand the context in which you're applying or from which you're applying. And so we care about what's available in your context and how you're challenging yourself in the classroom. And so we want to make sure that there is a rigor to the courses that you're taking, as well as good performance. And so grade trends are important. There are oftentimes explanations as to why perhaps you had one errant grade. People are human beings in this process, and we all have good years and we have bad years and we have bad days. And sometimes a test didn't go well. This is where context is important, and we're going to talk about the ways that that can be shared. The other part of the academic section are standardized tests. For this academic year and for next academic year, we have just announced that testing is completely optional due to the pandemic and the lack of testing sites around the world. And so the SAT or the ACT, and subject tests, which would have otherwise been required in some cases, is completely optional. And we recognize that many students won't have an opportunity to take those exams. However, if English is not your native language, or if you attend a school where English is not the primary language of instruction, we highly encourage applicants to take English language testing. And we're going to talk about the 3 different types of English language tests that we accept. And the TOEFL, the test of English as a foreign language, IBT, the internet-based test, is accepted by Penn. We list here the ranges of these scores and what the minimum scores are for Penn. And we do this to give you some context, because different universities are going to have different standards, but typically speaking, we're looking for a 100 or higher on the TOEFL exam. The IELTS, the International English Language Testing System, is another perfectly acceptable test for us. We require a 7.0 or higher out of the 9-point scale for the IELTS. And then finally, the newest test that we're accepting is the Duolingo English test. This is an internet-based test on a scale of 10 to 160. Typically, successful applicants will have balanced scores in all the subsections of the Duolingo, and as well as the other tests, but typically a 120 or higher is competitive for our pool. So it's really not that one is better than the other, but rather take a look at these different exams, take a look at the fee structures, take a look at when they're offered and the fees, the ease of feasibility of taking them, and decide what's best for you. All right, and now we're going to talk a little bit about recommendations. So back to the academic section here, or keeping with it, what your teachers or school advisors, or in other cases, coaches or supervisors at your job say about you is helpful to an admissions committee. And the reason for that is we have a lot of qualified students who get good grades, who apply to a place like Penn. However, understanding the context and what kind of student you are, what you're passionate about, teachers can provide that kind of context. Are you the type of student who helps your peers whenever they need assistance? You might be the smartest person in the classroom, but are you selfish with knowledge, or are you sharing and helpful with that knowledge that you have, right? And your intelligence. The reason why that matters to us is because we're building a community of scholars, to be sure, but we want a certain type of scholar in our classroom. And our professors enjoy teaching the kind of student who wants to share knowledge with his or her peers. And so usually, more recent teachers are more helpful than teachers you've had 4 or 5 years ago. But this really helps for context. Now, as far as school counselors are concerned, some high schools or some schools don't have counselors like this. And so therefore head teachers would be perfectly acceptable, but essentially someone who can look at the bigger picture of your academic studies and not just one class that you've been instructed in. That's what the purpose of that letter is for. And I had mentioned at the beginning some additional letters. So sometimes if they can provide additional context to you, your character, who you are as a person, sometimes having non-academic letters can be helpful. be very judicious with the quantity of these letters, right? Maybe you're a very good athlete, and so having a coach from an athletic team. Maybe you were on the National Olympiad team for physics, and having the coach of the physics team would be helpful. Maybe it's a supervisor from a part-time job you've had. All of that is useful to us in understanding who you are as a person. All right, and now we're going to talk about the rest of the application. So these are all very important parts as well. What you do outside the classroom tells an admissions committee what you care about. I want to just emphasize for everyone that there is not a set list of approved activities that we're looking for. In fact, if you do things because other people are doing them and not because you're interested in that activity, it's not going to be helpful to your application, because we care about something if you care about something. And that passion or excitement will come through. Please do things that help to further a hobby that you have, or perhaps just explore an interest that you have, right? And again, it's about context. In some communities around the world, there are many things to do in school clubs and organizations, and other places there are not. And so students will get involved in their community, right? They'll do things in community organizations, whether it be service or jobs and so forth. It's really what makes sense to you. It's really about doing something well and not doing many different things simply for the sake of having a long list, or a long resume, right? We're less interested in long resumes and more interested in deep resumes in terms of what you're doing. The essays, you have complete control over what you tell us. Think of the essays in any type of application to university as an opportunity for you to share what you want to say to an admissions committee, right? What do you want us to know about you? The other thing about this is, just like the activities, there's not a set list of things we're looking for. Is the essay unique to you? Does it tell the committee something about you that we didn't otherwise know from just looking at your grades, right? Hopefully we've heard about some of these things through the recommendation letters as well, or maybe we can glean some of your interests from the activities that you tell us about. But the essay is a place for you to just put it out there to the admissions committee. Now, there will be essays that get read, the same essay, by every university you apply to. So if you're using the common application or the coalition application, there's an essay prompt, and that one essay should be important, and it should be interesting, and should tell us something about you, but that will be read by everyone. Whereas there are school-specific essays, and sometimes called supplemental questions, that are going to be very specific to that university. Our tip here is always answer the question. Don't regurgitate or reuse essays that you've written or other parts of writing you've used in other parts of the application, because if they're asking this question, they want to know from a fresh perspective what your answers would be for that question. So avoid redundancy with other parts of your application, and be very specific if you're asked to be in those prompts. It sounds like common sense, but this is a very important tip that we would offer you, because many applicants ignore that advice. Finally, if an interview is offered to you, at Penn, for example, we have many thousand graduates of the university who are alumni volunteers who do interviews for us. And they are really just interested in knowing who you are as a person, why you've applied to their alma mater. They're very interested and excited to just talk about their experience. That's why they're volunteering their time. It is not a job interview. So don't go to these incredibly nervous. Instead, accept the invitation. They're going to be completely virtual for this year at least, and just go prepared to explain why you've applied to a place like Penn or wherever you have made application. And then finally, we're going to talk about some of the questions that we ask. So the reason we ask you about all these different parts of this application, academics, what you're like outside the class, inside the class, we want to create a community, as I've mentioned. Every year, the admissions process starts from zero, and we build a class at Penn up to 2,400 students. And we want to know about your motivations. We want to know about your life experiences. Everyone has a different life experience, and your personality. We want to know how these things align with what our university offers. And so we'll ask questions like, what does the student want to get from our university? what does this student care about? You know, what does he or she really care about in the world? What kind of impact will they have as a student on our campus, right? It doesn't mean that you have to be the best violinist in the world, right, to make an impact, but you might be a musician and join our campus music groups, right? You might be an actor, you might be a wonderful researcher already and have a deep passion for the sciences. We offer many of these types of opportunities on our campuses. And so the entire application is there to shape, to answer these questions for us. And so the more information you can provide, the better.
Awesome, thanks, Justin. And I think Justin did such a great job of summarizing the questions that we ask in our committee room, but at the end of the day, you also get to ask yourself a number of questions. And so whether you are just starting your college search or you're finalizing your list, whether you're already in our applicant pool, there are going to be some questions that you should really be asking yourself, both when you're thinking about which colleges to apply to in the first place, but then also when you have those offers in hand of the schools that you've been admitted to, what are the things that you should consider? And so first and foremost, Penn and all of the institutions that we're speaking on behalf of today are schools. And so we need to make sure that they align with your academic interest. Penn has a tremendous engineering school, but if you are really interested in civil engineering, that's the type of engineering that we don't offer. So it's really important to think about the academic interests that you have and where you see them fitting in within the school that you're applying to. Penn is also a medium-sized school in a major city. And so thinking about how you're interested in learning, whether you want to learn in a specific size of classroom, whether you want to be exposed to a city, whether you want to live in a more rural area, and then also what's going on campus. I have run some of our social media channels, and I think that if you were to scroll through on Instagram or on Facebook, or you may be able to get a really good sense of the campus life, even though we're all apart at this moment, to see sort of what kind of performing arts groups are on campus. What is it like to be a student? Additionally, I think it's a really good idea to ask yourself questions about what are you interested in doing after college? What does career services look like? How does the school that you're looking at support international students and making sure that international students have opportunities after graduation? So once you're thinking about all those pieces of fit, you also do have to think about the financial fit and whether or not this is going to be a good fit for your family. But it's really important to go into this with an open mind. So we are lucky to be very well ranked, but the ranking that's most important is the ranking that's based on all of these factors that are very specific to you. And one person's dream school is not going to be another person's dream school. It's really about which one's going to ultimately be a great fit. Opinions are also something that we take into consideration as we make decisions across our whole lives. And those are things that I think the most important opinion will be yours. And we really encourage you to sort of create some balance and to really take some time to think about where you really want to be spending your time. And we'll talk a little bit at the very end before we get into Q&A about ways that you can learn a little bit more about Penn specifically. In addition, as you're going through the process, we do have a number of tips. So we've gotten a bunch of questions in the Q&A about like, what should we do? What do we look for? And I think that the best piece of advice, and even though it's a pretty generic piece of advice that we can really give you, is to be yourself. There are so many different people who are applying, and you will be served the best by really taking what you're doing. I think Justin said it well, is we care about what you are interested in. Understand that there are going to be lots of different factors in this process, and there's not a perfect formula. So really presenting yourself in the most authentic way that you can is going to be helpful. In addition, really letting yourself be in the driver's seat. There are lots and lots of parents and teachers and counselors and siblings and other folks who will be really excited to cheer you on as you go through the college process. But make sure that you're really getting in touch with how you're feeling about things, not worrying too much about what other people, siblings or friends are thinking, but really thinking about what you're ultimately going to be looking for in your education. Some other pieces: stay organized. Excel sheets, Google Sheets are going to be some of your best friends. Ask those teachers for recommendations, but make sure that you're developing that relationship. There was a really good question in the chat about how do we form relationships? How do we ask teachers if we've been virtual? And I think we all understand, as we've been reviewing applications this year, we've really been cognizant of the fact that some students have not met their teachers, depending on when you started high school. Some students had a half a year of the IB, and then have essentially been virtual ever since. And so we do understand that and know that your teachers and counselors are also able to write to that. So this is not a lost year by any means. Ask questions and communicate. We have an ask section of our website, so you can go search to see if your question has already been asked, but also you can enter new questions to learn more. There are lots and lots of virtual opportunities that all kinds of different schools are offering. And they can be a really good way to get sort of that next layer down, to speak to some students, to hear a little bit more about specific programs. Don't compare yourself to other people. Other people in your school will be applying to college at the same time as you. There are no limits of spots for countries or schools. We really are looking at every applicant individually. So don't worry that you're the second or third smartest student from a particular high school. We're always going to be looking at you as an individual and seeing what perspective and what voice you would be bringing to our community. And one that's not on here that I always like to focus on is that remember that you are still in secondary school. And it's really important to make sure that you're also enjoying your high school experience and that you're not rushing through the college process and forgetting about the fun things that are coming in this time. So take the time to be with your friends. You were friends with these folks before you started the college process. So it really shouldn't be the only thing that you talk about in this year or two of your life, to really make sure that you're still taking the time to plan for those exciting traditions. I know that many schools for students in their final year will have really fun things that are planned and that you're doing, and hopefully some of those things will happen still in this pandemic. And you should be taking the time to celebrate the successes that you're having in this part of your education instead of being too focused on the next piece. And the final piece is just to keep an open mind. I think there are 4,000 colleges just in the US, and there are some really great ones that you've never heard of. There are some really great ones that you've definitely heard of. And really, if people are recommending things, at least take a look maybe at what your counselor is suggesting that you look at as well. So just briefly before we get to our Q&A, and we have a ton of really great questions. It's really exciting to see the engagement here. We gave a nice overview of selective admission, and Penn practices selective admission, but there are ways to learn a lot more about Penn on a deeper level. So you can go to our virtual visit page, which maybe is how you found this one. And that will give you a sense of campus tours, information sessions that really go into specifics on Penn. We have some student chats, so Zoom meetings where you can actually speak directly to current students. We have a number of other workshops. I believe the next workshop like this one that we're offering is on curricular choices, and some folks asked about curriculum and how to make selections about which courses to take. You can also check out our social media. If you came late to the session and you want to see the whole session, then you can do that via our YouTube channel. It should be up in a few days. And then we do also have a virtual tour. So if you'd like to take in Penn sort of at your own pace, then you can click through and be guided by a virtual tour guide. I believe the first virtual tour guide is actually an international student from Egypt. So one of the students that Justin has worked with in the past. And so there are some great opportunities to hear about the international experience specifically in that session as well. Justin, any other tips or advice before we open it up for Q&A?
No, I think that's good. I think we're going to get to a lot of stuff in the Q&A because there are lots of questions, a lot of good questions here. And so are you okay with me kicking it off with a question for you? So one question that was asked is kind of interesting is, does it matter where you're applying from in terms of an advantage in the process? So whether it's a small country or whether it's a large country, it seems like it could go either way in terms of how that might be interpreted. How would you answer that?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. There isn't an advantage to applying from a small country or a big country, or to applying from the US or outside of the US. We're always going to be looking at students individually. But also, as someone who reads for some of the small countries, I think that sometimes students get worried that, how do you stand out? And so we really do take the time in our process to get to know our regions and to make sure that we really understand the regional context behind them. So when we're looking at students' applications, we don't have quotas by country, we don't have quotas by region, we don't have quotas by anything. So we really do look at the applications holistically, regardless of where they're coming from.
So I just want to reiterate, because there seem to be still a lot of questions about the testing policies for this coming year. So I just want to reiterate, in case you missed it at the beginning, Penn has announced that it is test optional for the coming academic year So that application cycle for next year is completely optional for everything but English language testing. So if you attend a school where English is not the primary language of instruction, you still need to submit English language testing, and that's like the TOEFL, the IELTS, or the Duolingo, and we make no preference between those 3 exams. That was another question that was asked, if we prefer one over the other. So I hope that answers your questions about testing for this coming year.
Also, sort of a fun question to add on to, Justin and I are like breaking news anchors here, is also with testing this week, we saw a couple questions about the subject tests. And as many folks on this call may know, the subject tests have been canceled by the College Board. So if you are a student in the US, there is no more opportunity to take a subject test. And I think there's one more test date for some international students. If you have subject tests that you have already used at this point, we do plan to look at them, but please know if you did not sign up for a subject test 2 years ago, it would never negatively impact your application. And sort of in line with that, there were questions about, should we put more weight onto the APs? And I think that we really want students to, in this time of being test optional, with the elimination of subject testing, to really focus on the classes that they're taking that are available at their high school. So you don't need to worry about adding additional markers. You can just take the classes you're taking. We don't prefer one curriculum over another one. It's our jobs also to know all of them. So there was a sort of side question. It was like, should I take AP tests? I'm in a national curriculum. I don't have choices in what I take. And we also know that there are many students who take the curriculum that the government says they're taking, and that's going to be how it's going to be. Just to sort of change topics, Justin, so there's a question here about letters of recommendation. So who should write the letters of recommendation? I think there's something in there about like how recent are those teachers? And then also, if the letters of recommendation can't be written in English, what are the appropriate avenues to get them translated?
Okay, that's a great question. So again, we are just interested in reading recommendation letters from people who know you well, right? So, or as well as they can know you. And so the teachers provide one context, other types of coaches or advisors or counselors provide a different context. If letters are not available in English, and we realize that many teachers will be writing in their native language, we ask that those be professionally translated for us when you apply. And we prefer to have the original letters along with the translations, but only the translations are required when you apply. So we do have lots of languages that are spoken on our campus, but unfortunately our process is such that we can't have things translated on our end in a timely fashion. So we ask that you have that professionally done for us when you apply to the university. So there are lots and lots of questions about, I think you addressed the one about the local curriculum and government sort of required courses versus like AP and IB. So again, the curriculum is up to, it's not up to you. The curriculum is what it is wherever you're applying from. And so we will look at you in that context, and that's important to know. Haley, what are you seeing in terms of other types of questions here?
Yeah, so I think one of the questions that would actually be really great, Justin, for you to answer is about academic advising once you get to Penn. So for students who apply to Penn, can you change your major after you come, and sort of what if you don't know what you want to do? So what are the resources at Penn once you get here to understand what you want to do when you grow up?
This is a great question. One of the reasons why you would apply to university in the United States is for the ability to not overly specialize immediately, right? So at a place like Penn, you make application to one of 4 undergraduate schools: the College of Arts and Sciences, the School of Engineering and Applied Science, the School of Nursing, or the Wharton School, which is our business school. And those 4 undergraduate schools each offer a degree. Within those schools, you have many, many options and choices about specialization. When you apply to the university, you will be assigned an advisor within that school, right? Because that's your home base. But at a place like Penn, you're able to study around the university. So a student who is specializing, let's say, in the social sciences, let's say you're interested in economics and political science, you'll have the opportunity to take classes in the School of Engineering and Computer Science, or in the Wharton School of Business in Public Policy and so forth, if you're interested in doing that. And one of the unique things about studying the liberal arts in the United States is that you oftentimes have a couple of years to decide what your concentration or your specialty will be. And you'll have academic advisors at a place like Penn working with you from the moment that you say you're coming to the university, who will help you to understand the context of all the different related subjects and offerings. And you're going to be exposed to a wide variety of skills that you're going to use throughout your life, regardless of what you specialize in. And we realize that for some international students, they must major in and receive a degree in an area that is applicable where they live and where they may return, to work one day. But in addition to all of that, you'll have exposure to the whole university to be able to supplement, that specialization that you'll develop. You don't need to know what you're going to do for the rest of your life from the moment you apply. However, you need to understand, generally speaking, what you'd like to study in terms of the academic family, right? So you do need to know, if you've applied to a school of engineering, why you want to be an engineer, but you may not need to know like exactly what kind of engineering at this point, but you need to demonstrate like a knowledge of why you've applied to an engineering school. So I think those are the big differences between some foreign or international university systems and the way that we organize our academic and advising here.
Great. There's a question that I'd like to address that's about COVID and our understanding. So the question was essentially, our admissions office is factoring COVID into what students have been able to participate in and grades and things like that. And so Justin and I work very closely together, and we have not seen each other in person in almost 10 months. So we are well aware, as are our colleagues across this entire industry, of how COVID has impacted both our own lives as well as the lives of students. And so when we're reviewing applications, and we are in the middle of reviewing applications for the class of 2025 right now, we've definitely noted that students haven't been able to participate in things in the same way. In addition, we've seen some students who've done really different activities because of COVID. We also understand that you may have had a dip in grades when transitioning to virtual. You may have had an increase in grades when transitioning to virtual. So in the application, in the common application, there is an additional information section as well as a community disruption section. And so we are very, very aware of sort of the regular, you couldn't go to this conference, this research opportunity didn't happen. There's no prefect this year because there's no in-person learning, all of those things. But if there's something that you really want to make sure that we know about your application, you will have the opportunity through that additional information section and through the community disruption section to speak directly to any challenges that may have happened. And I will say, in general, there, knock on wood, will be a time when we are not living through this pandemic anymore. And that additional information section is still really helpful for students who have a unique circumstance that's impacted their educational process, or who want to be able to give us a little bit more information. So know that that section is a section that we read very closely. And we really do, in our process, take the time to make sure that we're learning about you, not just through those documents that we talked about, but also some of the sort of connective tissue that may come through that additional information section as well. Justin, there's another question here about legacy admissions. Do legacies have a higher chance of being admitted, and how does the legacy admission process differ from the regular one?
Mm-hmm. So this is an interesting question. So this is not unique to the American system, but we have different categories of applicants that are called legacies, where essentially, if at Penn we define this as if a parent or a grandparent has a degree from the university, you're considered a legacy applicant. What that means in practice is that if students apply in the early round at Penn, they're given a very close examination. All of our applicants are given a very close examination, and it's such a selective process at this point that it's important to sort of balance like what we mean when we say like preferences, but we will give that person essentially a second look in the process, because it is considered good for the community to have legacies as part of the community who have a long history and knowledge, I think, of the university. Just as important, I want to point out, is a push by the university to include students who have come from families that have never attended university before. And so we call these students first generation college applicants, and they are just as important to us as legacy applicants. And it's because they bring a unique perspective themselves to our community by being the first in their families to attend university, and usually with very, very interesting life stories as well, because they're coming from all over the world, and our financial aid packages will be able to enable students who may need like a full ride, to come to the university. If they're admitted, they'll be offered everything that they need to attend, so that it allows us to really shape the class in such a way that you have, your roommate may have lived in 7 different countries and parents may have gone to Penn. You may be the first in your family to attend university and have never left your country until you enroll in your first year here. And that's kind of exciting, and you'll both learn from each other. So one of the questions I heard, Haley, was, or that I saw earlier, was, what if I apply early and I still can't afford Penn? Am I released from that binding agreement that we mentioned?
Yeah. So when students apply to Penn, we guarantee that we will meet 100% of demonstrated financial need. And so what demonstrated financial need means is that you'll send in all of those forms, whether it's international student specific forms, whether it's a CSS profile and a FAFSA, all depending on your tax filing status. And then we will come up with your estimated family contribution. And it is our goal to make that work for everyone. Each year we have a handful of students, and by handful I mean under 5, for whom something is going on with their financial aid, so it does not work out. And in the event that your financial aid doesn't work, then you would be released from your early decision agreement. That said, we work so hard to make sure that doesn't happen, because if students have applied early decision, and frankly, if students have applied regular decision, we want you to come. So if your financial aid package isn't working out, we do encourage you, before you just give up, to contact our office and to contact the financial aid office and talk about maybe why the numbers that we're seeing aren't matching up with the numbers that you're seeing. But it will happen to 1 or 2 students every year, and you would be released from your agreement. Justin, a question about the coordinated dual degree programs at Penn. If a student applies to a coordinated dual degree program, are they rejected outright if they don't get into that program, or can they be selected for a second option? And maybe also just what those programs are in general.
Sure. So I had mentioned that you come to Penn, and typically the majority of applicants will apply to one school at the university. There are, I believe, 4 or 5 coordinated dual degree programs where you apply out of high school, and in your first year, you're already in 2 different schools working towards this common curriculum. So some examples include the Huntsman program, which is International Studies in Business, which is between our College of Arts and Sciences and the Wharton School of Business, the Management and Technology program, the Jerome Fisher program, which is between the Wharton School and the School of Engineering, and there are others. So you apply to those programs when you make application to the university, and because they're sponsored by 2 of the 4 schools, you also have the option of being considered for one of those single degree options, if not admitted to that dual degree program. So if I apply to the Management and Technology program, I'm allowed to say, I'm only interested in Management and Technology dual degree program, or I would like to be considered for either the School of Engineering or the Wharton School, if not admitted to the M&T program. And then we will review your application again in that single degree process. And that's true whether you apply in early or you apply in the regular round for any of those programs. I just want to add that because Penn is so flexible with allowing students to study across the university, there are many students who earn 1 degree from the university, they have 1 major or specialization, and they've taken classes and they've done research in other schools at the university. And to some, that's just as meaningful as getting the 2 degrees. And so it's a unique situation at our university where we have 12 graduate schools, 4 undergraduate schools, and a teaching hospital system all on the same contiguous campus. And so I think that's really, really unique, because in a world right now where we can't travel, you wouldn't know that. But it's a very compact campus in Philadelphia, like in the city of Philadelphia. We didn't have any pictures today, I don't think, of the cityscape. But if you do a search for the city, you'll realize we're on this beautiful campus right in the middle of this wonderful big American city, with lots of wonderful opportunities right outside of the campus steps.
Yeah, there's a really good question that we just got in the chat, sort of speaking about Philadelphia. And also I think that's helpful for students to understand about life after graduation, which is like, what kind of support is available for students internationally who are interested in internships and jobs post-graduation. And so Penn has a really tremendous career services office. And Career Services works very closely with our International Student and Scholar Services Office to ensure that we're making sure that those same internship opportunities are available for students regardless of their citizenship. And so we work really closely with internship providers to make sure that sponsorship and things are working, and also with International Student and Scholar Services to make sure that you're obeying by all of the rules that are set by the visa. So depending on lots of different factors, you may have different kinds of visas. The majority of our students will be on an F1 visa, but it does change. And so ISSS, the International Student Scholar Services, will work very closely with you. In addition, after students graduate, if you do not have a US passport, you're eligible for something called OPT, which now that I said the acronym, I'm realizing I don't actually know what it stands for, but it essentially is a period of time that you can live and work in the US after graduating. And before you need to have some sort of sponsorship from a specific employer. So when students are going through that process, Career Services is also going to be really helpful, as well as the International Student Office, to make sure that you're taking advantage of that it makes sense to you, and that they're helping you get set up with an employer who's going to provide you with the opportunities you want to stay in the US if you'd like to. With that, Career Services also does a lot of work with international students around with international alumni around the world. So perhaps we saw there's a student here from Malaysia. I know there's another student from Norway, and we have alumni who live all over the world. So we'll also make sure that we're providing you with the opportunity perhaps to go home or to go back to the region where you're from, and then we do have opportunities for students to intern and work abroad as well. And thank you, Justin. OPT stands for Optional Practical Training. But hopefully that can be sort of reassuring to students, just in knowing that we're here to support you through the admissions process, and our colleagues in academic advising take over and support you through your academic career. And then the Career Services Office will make sure that after you graduate from Penn, you're being set up for success. And we're not just sort of dropping you into the bucket to try and figure out how to get a job without a US passport. So Justin, we probably have time for one or two more questions. Did you have another you wanted to pull out?
Well, one was just simply about English language testing again, and that was whether or not, I'm a non-native speaker of English, but I've been studying in the United States at a high school for 2 years. Do I need to submit English language testing? That's optional for you. It really is a case-by-case situation. So if you've demonstrated fluency through your grades and through your English language performance in class, then you probably do not need to submit. And I think for students who are in English language programs anywhere in the world, where that's the median of instruction, it really is up to you. But if you feel that it would enhance our understanding of your abilities in English, then you can submit the testing. That is an important part of our process, obviously, because many students do very well in their national or local language curriculum, but we need to know that you'll be able to keep up with the instruction here in Philadelphia on campus.
Awesome. So I think, a good last way to end, and I do actually appreciate the people in the Q&A who also told me that OPT stood for Optional Practical Training. So I'm glad that we have so many folks who are so on it and ready to do the next stage of their education after college. We've gotten a bunch of questions, and I think a good way to end it is just hopefully with some words of reassurance. So the most recent one I saw was, are we familiar with the Moroccan education system? But in general, all of our territory managers who read internationally, so whether it's for Europe or whether it's for Central Asia or whether it's for South America, regardless of where you're coming from, if you're coming from like one of the biggest countries in the world, like China, India, Russia, Brazil, or if you're coming from Angola, or if you're coming from Liechtenstein, or you're coming from Dominica, we will understand your curriculum. And it is the job of our admission officers to get to know their regions really well and to understand sort of the nuances of both regional curricula and then national curricula, as well as even just understanding sort of what's available on a broader scale. So is it common to do lots of extracurriculars? Is it less common? On top of that, there's a really great resource that I always like to just point people to in this process, which is Education USA. So Education USA is something some folks may be familiar with. It's run by the US State Department. They have offices all over the world. And Education USA is a free resource for international students who are interested in studying in the United States. And so it can be a really great resource for you if you have questions about applying, if you're interested in how specific country exams can be translated. They offer a lot of translation services. In addition, they're also a really great resource to us. So we have lots of students who apply, we're very familiar, but if we ever aren't familiar, they're the resource that we go to make sure that we understand. So know that as we're going through this process, it can seem like there are millions and millions of students applying to college. There are questions in like, how do we possibly read them all? It takes a long time. But know that we really do take the time to get to know the specific countries that students are coming from. And we may feel very far away, and all of these options may be very far away. We work with students who come to the US for the first time during orientation. And we totally understand that it can feel really far, but we do take the time to get to know those regions. I promise that we will answer questions and ask questions just as much when we don't know the answers. Any last piece of advice, Justin, that you'd like to offer to our very large and
Yeah, I mean, two quick points. One is, I know that we didn't get to a lot of questions. Many questions were asked that we didn't get to that were very specific in nature, and they were great questions and you deserve answers. We'd just like to encourage you to explore our website and to be able to ask those questions again, or to find out the answers to some of them, which is available on our website in terms of lots of specifics about academics and different offerings in each of our Penn programs and schools. But my parting advice is just to reiterate a theme that we've, I think, explained throughout the presentation, which is about being yourself. And so this idea being that you don't need to conform to something that you think we want to see or hear, because the way that I think people successfully navigate highly selective university applications is by being themselves, because then you'll resonate more, because there's no one else in this world that can be you, right, other than you. And so it's important to show us who you are in the application process and don't try to be someone else. That's my advice. And I think that that is sound as someone who's been reading applications for many years.
Thanks, Justin. I concur. So I did put in the chat for all of you our YouTube channel in case you are interested in watching this presentation again, or you only came in for the end of it. We've gotten lots and lots of really great questions. There are lots and lots of resources on our website to help answer those questions. And don't forget to actually go and find the Ask section of our website to find out some really granular information. So thank you all so much for coming. We're so appreciative of your time, and we apologize that we can't get to more of the questions today. So regardless of where you're coming from, regardless of what time it is for you, have a great rest of your day, or get to bed, it's late, and we'll speak soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye.